So I'm Ben. I'm one of the regional vice presidents for nCino. nCino is a cloud-based origination and onboarding solution. We predominantly focus on complex lending, so mortgages, commercial lending, SME lending, basically sectors of commercial organizations lending books that is complex by nature, where there are humans involved in these conversations, and where the risk of getting things wrong is higher than just financial. There are deep long-term relationships at risk and at stake with regard to what we do. We've been doing it for 15 years now. We cover a wide range of organizations. That ranges from your smaller, more challenger, more nimble organizations, right up through your larger challenger organizations, the likes of Shawbrook, Together Money, etc., and then right up into your sort of larger tier one type organizations, Santander, Barclays, and the like. On one hand, and I mean, hopefully I was reflecting on this when I looked at my video from last year when I did this thing, and I mentioned AI at that point, and it was at that point a year ago, like the hot topic, the hot conversation, and it still is. There's no getting away from that. I think where banks are at the moment is they're in a very awkward, what I would call middle ground. Okay, and I'm not saying awkward because that's necessarily a bad thing. It's a reality of where they sit. So on one side, you have the traditional how a bank or a financial institution needs to run. Compliance doesn't go away, regulation doesn't go away, customer expectation doesn't go away. And so your sort of more thorough, more conservative methodologies of doing things and ways of thinking about things still exist. That doesn't go away with AI. So whilst AI has come and brought a vast new ways of thinking about things and doing things, and you can build all sorts of cool and funky things, and you can do amazing proof of concepts really quickly now, the scrutiny doesn't go away. There's now overlays of the EU AI Act, there's overlays of the FCA interpretation of AI. And so they're caught in this in the middle, which is recognizing that the future of financial services and lending specifically looks very different to where we are today, but still having the sort of thing that pulls them back, which is saying, hold on, you've still got to be able to defend this to the regulator. You've still got to be able to stand in front of your regulator and say this is the right thing. You've still got to make sure you're doing the right thing for your customer. What we're seeing is that there's a huge amount of optimism and interest and excitement still about like where financial services could go and where lending could go. But it's juxtaposed a bit with how do we balance off the risk controls? How do we balance off the need for us to still be stable, to still be solid, to still be a bank, because this is ultimately what banks still are. And that's an interesting dynamic that we've had to do. I think the other overlay on that, and I think we've recognized this as an organization, is as a vendor, historically, like all vendors will say, oh, we're a partner. We're not a vendor, we're a partner. We're partnering you. We're the partner in this, we're the partner, etc. And sometimes that's taken as a bit of a markety type term. I will say we're partners because it sounds cooler and better and more familiar than vendor. I think what I've seen over the last year is the dynamic of what a partner means has actually shifted quite dramatically. So actually, when we go into conversations now, historically we've been able to say things like when there was an integration conversation or what should we integrate to for this, etc., etc. We used to be able to get away with kind of saying, oh, well, look, we can do APIs, we can connect to kind of anything you want to. Now what our customers are looking for is they're looking for us to guide them more than what they probably have historically. They're looking for us to help them lead the way into this new future, into the AI world. They're helping for us to understand in an ecosystem of players, who else should they be partnering with? Who else should they be thinking about? What else is cool out there? Which means that the level of understanding and the level of knowledge that you have to have these conversations has actually gone up. And that's a great position to be in because it starts developing true trust. But within that, there's a high degree of expectation on us in terms of our knowledge and understanding about the industry, the market, where it's going, and how can we help these organizations get there. We have our own models. We look at how we can deploy AI into organizations constantly. Within the background of that, I think we've recognized that actually, and look, I'm not going to say anything shocking here. Your model's only as good as the data that's going to feed it, right? The decision point's only as good as the data. Now, you can't do decisioning right now. It's not a viable thing within under regulation, etc., etc. It all has to be human-centric still, and you have to have explainability and transparency, right? So we recognize, though, that part of what we have to come to market with is it's not good enough to say, hey, we've got AI, okay? Again, I look back a year ago, 18 months ago, there was a bit of a flavor in the market of like, oh yeah, we've got AI, and it felt like AI was just being bolted on and bolted on, bolted on. But the reality of that is actually, when you're sitting with a bank and talking through them about like how this is going to work, on one side there's the really fun part about like, oh, what could this do for me and my organization? But on the other side is will my regulator come along with me on this journey in terms of that? Okay, we have to get really thorough. I mean, all you have to do is look at the regulation regarding this. We've had to become more thorough about our documentation, about our transparency, about our visibility, about what we're doing in the background, about where the data is going to go land and what we're going to do with it, etc. Because ultimately, the bank is going to have to stand in front of their regulators and say, and this is how it's going to work. Okay, and so we're taking it incredibly seriously. I mean, so seriously, like we look at this in terms of like our future as an organization is very aligned to being an AI first, AI native organization, right? Okay. Whenever an organization like us looks at like what we should do in the market, there's kind of three different ways of doing things, right? You can build it yourself, you can partner with someone else to do something, or you can go and find something to buy to do the thing. This falls squarely within the first two camps, okay? On one side, there's what are we building ourselves, okay? No one knows our solution like we do, okay? And with the artificial intelligence part, that's gonna be, so we believe, so intrinsically fundamental to our proposition and to the value we drive for organizations that we want to have control over that, and we want to build that out. And so we've gone and we've got to make sure we've got the right people in place to be able to do that, and the right documentation to help our organizations. And then on the other side, there are going to be gaps within that to recognize like no one organization is going to be able to build everything. So then how do we go and find the right partner ecosystem to work with on the things that we may not want to do? And then further down the line, that might become a buy conversation should the right thing come around. But that's kind of how we're thinking about this. And again, it's vitally important, because if we're going to be trusted partners of these organizations, this AI piece and specifically the regulation around it becomes one of the most important things that we have to lean in on and be confident and comfortable with. On one side, I think that there's a number of new and interesting startup ventures that have come out over the last year that are doing interesting things in different pockets. And I think a lot of financial institutions are testing things like that and are working out like, could we use this piece, could we use that piece, etc., etc. And we're doing that ourselves. I mean, we've got design labs who are out there working on like, what if we deployed AI to do this, and what if we did it over here, and how would an agent work within here? I think that's probably the path for the next year, next 2 years. And I think, to my point, within that, it's developing that trust model, it's developing that the framework to be able to do that. I think, interestingly, though, one thing that is going to become a key piece for the next 2 to 5 years is actually organizations recognizing that no matter what you want with your AI and how cool you want to make it, it is only as good as the data that's going to serve it, okay? And so it comes back to the fundamental that nCino has always delivered, which is actually we do the plumbing really well, okay? How do you make sure your data model is in the right order? How do you make sure that when you deploy a model, it knows what it's looking for, it can find it easily, and it can surface that data really effectively? How do you make sure that if you want to bring data from third-party sources, you can surface that within the same model and actually explain it and do things like that? That's really exciting. I think the challenge we look at, and I think all organizations are probably in the same bucket, is the pace of change has moved on so quickly that it's very difficult to say what does 2 years from now look like. I think we're more gearing towards like, how do we make sure that the platform and our solutions are future ready, irrespective of what might come? And I think that's more it's the future-proofing piece that I think is going to be more vital to our partners and, frankly, to our own organization as we look at moving into our future state too.